All right, so that's what happened. Sorry, guys, I was having a little bit of a hiccup there. I used the Stream Deck to control all this stuff, the lights, the camera, the sound, everything. And they updated it, and they added a button that starts my live stream, which replaces the function. Anyway, I'm sitting here hitting the go live button, and it's not doing anything, and I was freaking out a little bit. All right. Well, it's been an interesting week, and SCOTUS has been whooping ass. I hope y'all noticed the title tonight, Democrats, the Sickness Unto Death. And I hope, I pray, and I see you there, Rod, and I'm talking to you, that some of y'all been reading some books. All right? After the show, I'm going to drop a link in the description to a couple of books that I'm going to be talking about during this live stream. And they're both by Soren Kierkegaard. We're going to be talking about the present age and the sickness unto death. But we're going to be talking about them in the context of the modern left, the madness that is gripping our country and the Democrat Party, why the red wave is going to roll like a tide of elephants over this country come November, and what we can learn from Soren Kierkegaard and Guy Debord. I hope y'all been paying attention. There's been a lot this week. So, Soren Kierkegaard died young, played Christianity on hard, was a firm believer that if Jesus didn't hurt, you were doing it wrong. Okay? But that's not the part of Kierkegaard that I want to talk about tonight. Soren Kierkegaard wrote two books that I have very much enjoyed. The Sickness Unto Death and The Present Age. Now, The Sickness Unto Death, it's a hard read. It's dense. All right, look, I'm a graduate of the Defense Language Institute. My degree is in Korean language. I speak Korean, English, Spanish, a little bit of Latin, and a smattering of the other Romance languages, enough to get myself in trouble. I can hop around in Gaelic and Russian and German. I'm what you call a hyperpolyglot. So when I tell you that The Sickness Unto Death is a dense and difficult read, you can take that shit to the bank. I may even break it out sometime and actually just read it to you guys and discuss it. And that's one of those things where we read like 3 or 4 sentences and we will talk for an hour about those 3 or 4 sentences just so that we can read the next 1 or 2. Yes, sir. All right. Now, in The Sickness Unto Death, Kierkegaard describes despair. And what despair is, according to Kierkegaard, is a sickness of the soul. You can get the flu. That's a sickness of the body. If the flu kills you, if you die of the flu, then you are no longer ill with the flu. You can become depressed or psychotic. These are illnesses of the mind. If you die, you are no longer depressed or psychotic. That illness leaves you. But according to Kierkegaard, despair is a sickness of the soul. Now, personally, I consider film to be among literature. I consider film to be the modern literature. When I see a film, I think, I love music. I love art. I love painting. I can appreciate fashion to a point. I can be amazed by what a makeup artist can do with a character. I love story. I love metaphor. I love big, bold visual. I love complex communication and deep, deep grammar. film is all art. On despair, I would turn you to the never-ending story. As the nothing wipes out the world of Fantasia. When you talk about nothingness, and this is pertinent to despair, and this is the sickness, I believe, which is gripping American leftists today. And I'll get back to that in just a minute. The never-ending story is about a world being consumed by despair. All right, Heidegger said that the nothing is the thing which annihilates, which nothings. It's not sufficient that the nothing is empty and void and vacuous. Nothingness, absence, perpetuates itself. It destroys it, and it destroys without replacing. If you destroy a thing, then you replace it with the ruin of itself. But like in the never-ending story, the racing snail rider says there used to be a beautiful pond, and now there's not one. And the rockbiter asks, "Did it dry up?" No, it's just not there anymore. Come on in, brother. We have Cade with us tonight.
I'm gonna let you finish your story.
Well, I appreciate that.
About my favorite childhood movie of all time.
But I see that you just couldn't help but interrupt us because
you're a mean, mad white man.
And I'll spring that again somewhere. But I was really looking forward to dropping it on you. So I was talking about the nothing annihilates. We're talking. I got to Heidegger a little bit. Obviously, I'm a Nazi because I've read Heidegger, and I've read Nietzsche too, by the way.
Well, you're white and voted for Trump. So.
Oh my God! Well, you know, most people don't read Nietzsche. They read half of one sentence. God is dead. The sentence is God is dead, and we have killed him. Nietzsche lamented the passing of faith, and he blamed man for it, and that's an incredibly important distinction. But anyway. I started off talking about Soren Kierkegaard, the sickness unto death, despair. I'm afraid we're going to end up talking a little bit about suicide in that context tonight. And guys, I know it's the 1st of July. We need to do some patriotism. We need to talk about the 4th of July. That's Wednesday. And I may just do a whole special show on Wednesday for that. No call. Oh, she must be occupied.
I appreciate it anyway.
The babies. You know the babies. I love them. So, the never-ending story. It's the world is being consumed, and what it's losing is faith. It is faith itself. The ability of man to believe in his own capability, to have faith in his achievements, in his dreams, in his wishes, in his desires, and to have faith that he can achieve those means, those ends. And as he's losing that faith, the world of Fantasia is dissolving. It's going away. We had this beautiful lake, and then one morning it just wasn't there anymore. Did it dry up? No. A dried up lake would be something. No, this was nothing. There was nothing. When Kierkegaard describes despair, the sickness unto death, unlike the flu, when you die it goes away, or depression, when you die it goes away, according to Kierkegaard, to despair, when you die, despair follows with you into the next world, follows with you into the next step. And it is to despair, which is to be in hell, according to Kierkegaard. And the way to a flu, you catch the flu. You have the flu. You go mad. You become depressed. These things are things that occur. despair does not occur. It is a thing that you do. According to Kierkegaard, one does despair. You despair. And it is your default setting. The only way to not despair is to not despair. It is a thing that you must actively do. You must actively go out of your way to do the not despairing. And how that is done is to have a model of what you should be, to model yourself, and to strive to achieve that model, to become the realization of that model, that perfect ideal of yourself. Now, for Kierkegaard, who played Jesus on Hurt Me Plenty, Christ is that model, and there is no other model.
So would he argue then that hope would not be the antithesis of despair because hope is not an active?
Yes.
He would say that you would have to attain, you would have to do something to attain said joy. Right? So
right.
hope would
One
not,
could argue
we always think of hope as the opposite of despair, but the way you're describing despair, the way he describes despair, it sounds as if hope is too weak of an antithesis of it. It would have to be something more actionable.
I would argue that hope itself could be served by having the model. The model can be hope. Mm-hmm. But knowing that there is the model to hope for, to strive for, that you have an end goal, that you have an objective. That objective is to become Christ, and according to Kierkegaard. I'm more than happy to take Kierkegaard's philosophy in this way and say that model can simply be the best self, the best of me. And
but I like it. I like
yeah.
Hope is an important thing. Hope is incredibly important. Hope is often the thing that keeps one from. You mentioned suicide earlier. Hope is often the one little tiny ray of it can be the one thing that keeps you from putting yourself in your own grave. But I do like this idea that hope in that context would seem to be a little weak, a little non-assertive.
Yeah, when all you have to run on is hope, you don't have a plan to get there.
Right.
Then what can you do but despair? If you set hope out there to achieve and you don't go after it, you don't have any method by which to attempt to attain it, then you sit here separated from your hope by the crushing burden of knowing it cannot be had.
Right. Hope requires no action whatsoever.
Correct. In fact, hope is a thing. Mm-hmm. But building your better self, as I called it in my paper on the subject, the vital work of selfing. To do the vital work of selfing is the only way to defeat hope. Now, that brings me to the vital work of selfing. And this is why the left despairs. Why they are being consumed so deeply by very serious despair. They do not have a model of the self to reach for, to achieve. And it is precisely because of the identity politic. Because they have segregated themselves intellectually, spiritually, and physically into these identity political groups. There is no model of a perfect individual for the individual leftist to reach for, and so they despair.
They think they have a perfect collective.
And that's the problem, is the collective is not. The collective abhors the self, averts the self, eschews the self, and destroys it. And they become a lost face in the crowd or the public. And we're going to get to that in a minute. I want to show y'all a clip. This is a pro-Trump political campaign ad. More accurately, it's an anti-the other guy's political campaign ad that nicely buttons up a whole lot of important shit. Let me show you the clip.
A few years ago, ideas that we talked about were thought to be fringe ideas, radical ideas, extremist ideas. Those ideas are now mainstream.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
What's Uncle Tom but for white women who disappoint other white women?
One way you get rid of Trump is a crashing economy, so please bring on the recession.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
An individual came up to us and asked us whether they were Republicans or Democrats on the field. Jeff told them it was Republicans.
A top U.S. Republican and some of his aides have been shot during baseball practice.
The suspect identified as James Hodgkinson.
James Hodgkinson from Belleville, Illinois, had some strong political views.
I've just been informed that the alleged shooter at the Republican baseball practice this morning is someone who apparently volunteered on my presidential campaign.
One Facebook group Hodgkinson belonged to was actually called Terminate the Republican Party.
Who is this guy?
So that's that's pretty powerful shit. The whole thrust of that there is about targeting people based on their beliefs, about being part of a collective that abhors the individual. It's interesting. Earlier this week there was a shooting at the newspaper in Maryland. Mm-hmm. Tiny little newspaper. Nobody ever heard of it until a bunch of people got shot there. And of course, the immediate reaction was, "This is Donald Trump's fault because he said that the press is the enemy." This, that, and the other thing. That's interesting. When a guy who was a member of Bernie's actual presidential election campaign went and asked for Republicans on the baseball field and then started shooting people. Well, he was just one lone nut, right? He wasn't Bernie's fault. No. But wait a minute. Didn't we just hear Bernie say some of our ideas used to be considered extreme and radical, but now they're mainstream?
Yeah, well, I mean, in fairness, we heard violent calls to action from Trump in the past too. But there is a dangerous disease in the left, and just because this man had the balls, so to speak, to act on his extremist beliefs doesn't mean he's the only one by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but my point is that the reporting is automatically.
Oh yeah, well they minimize and maximize to their
yes.
at their leisure. I mean that's what they do.
And that's part of the Russell conjugation thing that we've talked about several times in the past.
Right.
Right, I keep looking. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted. I keep looking at the monitor, and it is dialed in tonight. I've been messing with the settings and trying to get it back together because the quality had dropped off for a minute there. And damn, I nailed it tonight. Hell yeah.
But
okay.
Isn't it funny when Dylan Roof does something though? How extreme was what Dylan Roof did? I mean, it was extraordinarily extreme.
Yeah.
But that was representative of, that represented white people, not just white supremacists. It tied in neo-Nazis.
Yeah, it was all white people because all white people are racists.
Right. It was gun owners.
Of course.
Pro-Second Amendment people who support gun owners.
Right.
It was Republicans.
Of course.
No political affiliation was even ever spoken of.
Right.
But it was automatically Republican. I don't even know if they ever determined what he was politically. That didn't matter. Republican, obviously. He represented he became the poster boy for every anti-left group. But when this guy does it, yeah, he was the lone wolf. That's how they operate. That's how the media operates. They tell you what to think. I mean, that's what they're in the business. Who was it that said that? That's our job. The woman
Mika
on
Brzezinski.
yeah, that was a classic moment in media history.
I'm just afraid that Donald Trump. I need to add that to the clip box so that I can to the clip. Yeah, the clip box so I can play it again. Yeah, I'm just afraid that he'll be able to talk to them directly with this Twitter, and he'll tell them what to think, and that's our job. Damn, woman!
Oh, did you notice that I'm see-through tonight?
Oh, that's fantastic.
Isn't it? Yeah. Did not think of that when I got the green Gatorade.
That's all right. Okay, so back to Kierkegaard, and with relation to this, Kierkegaard talks about this thing that he calls the public or the crowd. And that's in the book The Modern Age. I'm sorry, The Present Age. Published in 1856, I think, and deeply and incredibly relevant today. You know, of course, Guy Debord in the early 1900s warned us about coming political apocalypse, where political campaigns and just politics in general would be little more than a contest of image. That the image of a person would become more important than the content of a person. He said that over 100 years ago, and holy shit. He didn't know nothing about no Twitter, no Instagrams, no selfies. You know why they call them selfies? Because it's way easier than saying narcissisties. Oh, I saw my new favorite Marine joke on Facebook. I just swept through my brain. What do you call it? What do you call a Marine with an IQ of 160?
Oh, a company?
A platoon!
A platoon!
Oh, dear. Anyway.
By the way, my personal photos gallery on my Facebook is labeled Narcissus's Pool. True story.
So, according to Kierkegaard, there's this thing called the crowd or the public. And it is not the sum of its parts. The idea that a thing can be more than the sum of its parts, if you take a bunch of cogs and put them together, then the cogs become a watch. But a pile of cogs ill-assembled is not itself a watch. Just having them together doesn't make it a watch. There's something more. And I almost hate that I mentioned the watch now, because now I have this deep burning desire to dig into cosmic arguments for the existence of God, based on whether or not one can find a watchmaker sunning himself on the Florida Keys. That's a reference that probably just went over way too many heads, and I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I'll bring it back down.
Would have mine as well if you had not explained it to me mere months ago.
Yeah. But the crowd, the public, so all of the people make up the crowd. But the crowd, and I'm going to use the two words interchangeably, Kierkegaard does anyway, the crowd or the public, the crowd is an entity unto itself. And the bitch about it is that the crowd, because it is made up of and contains the people, is unaccountable. Because everyone is a member of the crowd. The crowd... Rocus? Row. You're not helping, woman. For anybody who's not clued in on that, when I say you're not helping, woman, my wife is watching, and she makes comments, and they're distracting, because she's...
clever.
Unfortunately, very, very funny and clever. And she likes to feed the ogre. That's what it is. and it's part of why I'm so fat. The crowd is unaccountable to anybody because it is made up of everybody. The crowd consumes and includes the people, the people's government, the organizations of the people's government, and so on and so forth. The crowd is all. It's this massive, sweeping, amoebic beast with its own sort of sick consciousness. And the crowd will have thoughts and opinions. And of course, the mob, which is not the same as the crowd. The crowd, and then subordinate to the crowd, is the mob, which is made up of only the people without the organizations. And then there is the press, which is made up of only the people that do the work of the press, but is similarly an individual entity. The press influences the crowd and the mob, is unaccountable because of the nature of its polyformic entity. It is subordinate to the crowd, but it influences the crowd. You know, you print enough lies on the page and people will start to believe them. You keep saying that Donald Trump is a Nazi because he's not a Democrat, and despite the simple fact that the Nazis were socialists, that should be enough. Are the Nazis on the left or the right? Well, let's see. They're socialists. That's not hard. Are the Nazis on the left or the right? Well, let's see. They were genocidal racists. Jim Crow, Civil Rights Act, abolition. Oh, that was all the right. Huh. Well, the communists are the far, far left. Oh, but is there a meaningful distinction between Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin and Mao and anybody named Kim?
Is there a meaningful distinction between them and, say, Barack Obama?
No.
Or between themselves?
Barry Sorrento?
Yeah. Barry-O.
I can't believe you mentioned Barack Obama.
You're a mean, mad white man.
No, but I am.
Yeah. Okay. Scooby Snacks. Running around, robbing banks, all messed up on Scooby Snacks. My wife's not old enough to remember that song.
She's like 3 years younger than you.
Yeah, I know. Anyway. So, we have this problem now with the mob mentality. The crowd, the mob, the press, the people. So here's how the... Hang on, bear with me. Kierkegaard is dense, and we're getting into it. I thank God that I only had to touch on Heidegger, and I didn't have to dig into like the thingliness of objects and the to-handedness of things and the thrownness of people into the world and the taken care ofness.
Do I need to go get your James Brown cape?
It's burning.
Can you get your James Brown cape?
Handy.
I can't go on. I can't go on. Come on, James. Get on back out there, James. Go. Now, nobody's old enough to remember that one. Not even Rod.
I'm also not hip to the Thames because I don't spend a lot of time in UK. But, what have you. Okay. People, press, mob, crowd. There's some reasonable debate on the level of the mob and the press within the crowd / the public. But, so, the crowd, the further the crowd moves in one direction or the other, and you can almost think of this as analogous to the Overton window. I like to picture the crowd as a pile of people that leans in a direction. Eventually, it's going to fall in that direction. It will move like a wave, intellectually and politically. Just the opinion of the public sways. The expression to sway opinion is really apropos for this sort of a conversation. Then you get down to the mob. The mob is a real tenuous bitch. The mob mentality. People don't think for themselves when they get swept up into part of a mob. And there is a lot of reasonable and intelligent debate about what the factors are here. It may be intelligence. It may be that more intelligent people are slower to get consumed by the mob, to get enveloped with the mob. But there is a point where pretty much anybody can get swept up in the mob mentality. So essentially, we all have, and this is why principles are so important, to know what you believe and what you stand for. Everybody has a sort of threshold at which they begin to engage in whatever the activity of the mob is.
I think it's lawlessness. I think it's etiquette, a lack of etiquette, lack of decorum, knowing that you, for a moment, are above the law. You basically revert to being a toddler. I mean, you get swept up. All the chemicals running through your body are not chemicals what are needed to make your brain go good. And you start being dumber. And then you just wave fists and yell thing and run into people and yell.
Okay.
I've seen very intelligent people swept up in mobs and act very unintelligent.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. But I'm kind of getting at something different. You'll see what I'm getting at.
Okay.
So the mob, like I said, anybody can get swept up, but we have our thresholds. There's a threshold. And the way the mob begins, there are people out there whose threshold is 0. They don't need a reason or an excuse or an incitation to pick up a rock and throw it through a window. Their threshold for engaging in violence and mob conduct is 0. Well, there may only that person may be a rare occurrence. But all it takes is one, because less rare than that one person are people whose threshold is 1. So if you've got one whose threshold is 0 and 1 or 2 or 3 whose threshold is 1, then suddenly you have 2 or 3 or 4 people engaged in the activity.
Try again.
So the more people get involved, the more rapidly they overcome the threshold. So most people have a medium threshold. They need 10, 20, 30 people to get involved in doing some stupid shit before they get deeply engaged. And then the best of us, I'm going to be a total egotist in this and argue that I am probably one of the better in this. I believe I have a higher threshold for mob engagement. You know, it might take 1,000 people engaging in mob activity before I break my threshold and I pick up a rock and start throwing it at stuff. Now, that doesn't necessarily even mean that 1,000 people are suddenly throwing rocks at a building and I pick up a rock and throw it at the building. It's a mob. It may be that where my threshold flips is there are 1,000 people doing violence and suddenly I feel the need to do violence on my own behalf to the 1,000 people doing violence around me. And, you know, the lizard brain just pops on and you lose control of it. I don't think you ever totally lose control of it. But there is a point at which you've either maximally lost control or you've either maximally lost control or you've surrendered it. It may be more correct that you surrender that control to the crowd.
Have you ever been in one?
What, a mob?
A mob.
Soccer riots, rather. Soccer riots in Spain.
In Spain?
Once.
I have never been involved in it.
It was awesome.
Did you start speaking like the
somebody bring me some popcorn and a machete. We're lighting this shit off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was your threshold that day?
Rough estimate, 1,500 people.
And you were
Toledo?
18? 19 maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, 18.
Toledo, España.
It was a beautiful place. It's pretty much bar, church, bar, knife store, swords, bar, church, bar, knives, swords.
And everyone takes a nap at 1400?
Yep. 1400, they roll up the sidewalks, man.
That is awesome.
Like, I went into a bar at 14:30 one day, and it just didn't even occur to me. I walk into this bar to order a drink, and the bartender was offended that I was making him work.
So he didn't say no.
No, he was just like, who the fuck do you think you are? But yeah, so the mob is also unaccountable because the mob is largely faceless. That's what's so scary about the black
what I meant
bloc.
by lawlessness.
That's what's so scary about the black bloc. The black bloc is literally a faceless mob. They're not just a mob, which in and of itself is a faceless thing which is unaccountable. They are a mob which does not reveal individual faces. And believe you me, the overwhelming evidence in this case is that such anonymity breeds a willingness to do more violence. Take the burning cars, the trash cans, the fires being set to to colleges, the Battle of Berkeley. There were some violent anti-fascists over the weekend that attacked a bunch of Patriot prayer groups and freedom rallies. And they keep calling themselves anti-fascists. And they keep saying we're anti-fascists that are against Nazis and we're communists. Guys, have you ever seen a fucking history book? Okay. The fascistas, the fascists were Italian. Las fachas are in Spain. The Nazis and the fascists didn't get along to begin with. And when they finally did become the Axis, it was begrudgingly because Hitler was going to run over Italy. Right? Neville Chamberlain was already trying to get Great Britain to sign a peace treaty and capitulate to all of Hitler's demands. When my boy Churchill stepped up and said, "We will never surrender." And okay, so the lefties are against the commies and the Nazis because we sided with Russia. We allied with Russia temporarily, who were communists at the time, to fight the Nazis. And of course, communism is good because Democrats in Venezuela. Guy, one of the reasons that we have a hard time coming to agreements in this country is because these people are so muddy-brained and fucking backwards. It's hard to have a conversation with them because they don't know what they're talking about. They can't formulate a conversation. Oh, I got off track a little bit. Okay, we went through the crowd. We talked about the press. We covered the group, the public.
Are you off Kierkegaard?
Mob mentality. That's all Kierkegaard.
Oh, okay.
The present age. That's all Kierkegaard. It's not sickness unto death. But that stuff, I mean, it will hurt your skull. I highly recommend it with coffee, a good cigar, nice warm day on the back patio, put your feet up. Read a sentence or 3 at a time. Stop. Blink. Move forward. Yeah, the self as an entity. The self as an entity is a relationship between the self and itself, and the way that it relates to itself. It is a relationship of self to self in relation to the model self. That's the first sentence.
Ouch. So you did people press mob crowd.
People press mob crowd.
Did you make your way?
The press is also unaccountable to the people, functionally unaccountable to the crowd. It can be consumed and replaced by the crowd, but it can also influence the crowd. But the press is its own entity. It seems, when you watch mainstream media, it seems like there's some nefarious great press dictator who issues memos and says, these are the words you're going to say, because they keep saying the same thing over and over again. But that's not actually what's happening. There is some of that happening. There is some of that coordination going on. But part of it is what I've called in the past, I've referred to as 5th generation or amorphous warfare. Of course, 4th generation warfare is the kind of war that the U.S. is fighting in the War on Terror, where we're fighting against guerrilla tactics. It's called asymmetric warfare. Now, in asymmetric warfare, you're still dealing with organized groups that have leaders, but their attack patterns are asymmetric. They basically exist all around you, and you are among them, and then where you are more numerous, they are amid you as well. That's why we see suicide bombers here and there. But, it's funny, we haven't seen a whole lot of suicide bombers or terror attacks since, early last year? Say, shortly after the Moab.
Wait, what does that stand for?
Mother of all bombs.
No, what does it actually stand for?
Mother of all bombs.
No. It has another thing. That was a. Put your hat on. I'll look it up.
Moab. Okay. So, what happens is the narrative becomes its own piece of the entity. The narrative becomes the sort of the mind of the entity.
Massive ordnance air blast.
Yeah, mother of all bombs.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I probably.
It was just a really happy coincidence. It may have been one of those things where they made it to where it would...
Retroactive continuity.
Exactly. Yeah. That.
Like when Data had a kid. Retroactive continuity.
I was thinking when Steve Jobs named that program Lisa. But anyway, go ahead.
So, the narrative kind of spins out like that. It creates itself. It's self-generating. You said Lisa. What was her name at the IRS? I forgot Chicky D's name, but the one that got called out for all the targeting of conservative political groups during the Obama election cycle.
What was her name?
Damn. Anyway,
I'm Googling.
Barack Obama never told her to target conservative groups to target conservative groups and delay their tax exempt status.
Shulman?
No, that's not it. She knew. She just understood that was something that was good for the party. That was
Lois Lerner.
Yeah, Lois Lerner. Yeah, so nobody ever ordered her to do that. She just understood that that was something that would please His Highness Barry Sorrento, and took it upon herself to do that. That's the amorphous warfare.
By the way, the first thing, one of the first things that comes up on Google, because we know Google, is Newsweek's article. Remember the IRS scandal? It was fake news all along.
Oh, we're gonna have to talk about that.
Yeah.
On its own. Yeah. I'll pull that up in a little bit. And
just like Vox saying that all of the economic boom right now is a result of 8 years of Obama.
Yeah.
Took him 10 years.
Obama's entire presidency was a deep failure, and it was all Bush's fault. So he gets to take the credit for Trump winning. I'm sorry. Who sat down with Kim Jong-un?
Oh, they're saying that now even Fox News is saying that they're actually that Kim Jong-un is now increasing the nuclear threat. That it was all fake to lull us into some false sense of security, I assume, or something like that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Either way, he proved he was 6 feet taller than him. So
there's this great clip.
It worked.
There's this great clip where they're in the room and they're sitting at the table, or they're about to sit down at the table. Trump standing behind his chair and Kim standing behind his chair, and Trump makes a fat joke about referencing both of them. Mm-hmm. Basically a self-deprecating fat joke on behalf of himself and Kim Jong-un, and the camera catches Kim's face, and he's just got this look, this I don't understand what's happening. Look, it's fucking magic. Trump's like, we're both a couple of fat guys, and there's Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un.
You're a mean, mad white man.
See, I can just keep using that.
I just keep thinking of what's his name from Office Space. He just had that look on him. That Stephen Root played.
Yeah.
The one that the whole thing was based on actually was inspired by the cartoon based on that particular.
Right. Milton.
And I was told there would be cake. I was told, and that's this look on his face. I don't know if he knows any English whatsoever, or if did you have a translator that was somewhere just out of sight at all?
No, I don't think
because he just looked like he was trying to catch up the whole time, and I just kept picturing him going. I was told that the big one was going to surrender. I thought he was here to sign papers, and he was going to disband his army, but nope, he's going to create a space force. So we're screwed.
I have not done a show about Space Force. I kind of want to. I haven't yet.
Are we going to kill bugs? Are we going to kill giant bugs?
God, I hope so. Oh, I think we're kind of spinning down. We've gotten off the track.
Yeah. Did you cover all the thing? People press.
I covered enough of it.
Okay.
And I want y'all to think about the things that are happening. I didn't even get into the Supreme Court wins this week.
And then?
Do we want to dig into the Supreme Court right now, or do?
I'm not prepared for it, but I'm prepared to stare off into space while you do it.
No, I'll do a separate show for that.
Son of a bitch! I thought Fee had popped some popcorn and forgot it and left it in the
Yeah,
microwave. But
I
turns
also got
out
excited.
It's in South Georgia.
Rod.
Wait, are you in South Georgia, Rod, or are you up here?
Just so you know, Rod. Just so you know.
You're a mean, mad white man.
It's about you.
That's for giving us hope with your popcorn.
We're gonna put a little flag there just to give them hope.
Hope. All right, guys, it's been a good night. It's been a good show. I hope you found the conversation enlightening. And until next week, I love you. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. And remember, if you build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for the evening. But if you set a man on fire, he'll be warm for the rest of his life. Good night.